let's start. Welcome to our Alma Ask the Expert session on course reading. We would have received quite a bit of issues that have been sent over the last couple of days, and we'll try to cover all of them, or as much as we can. I will try to go pretty quickly through those. There are lots of issues, so we'll be doing this quite quickly. Still, you can ask at any point. If you prefer to just speak up, unmute yourself and speak up, that's of course welcome. If you prefer to use the chat, I have the chat open in front of me, and I check it every couple of seconds. So if you want to send anything over the chat, I'll try to relate to that as we go as well. So feel free, whichever way you're comfortable with. So let's perhaps just start with the first issue that has been sent over. There are actually a few questions that were sent, comment questions that were sent about this issue: start date, end date, status attributes, the relation between these and their functional effect. There are actually a number of comments on that, so perhaps we would like to elaborate a bit on that, and we'll keep coming back to that as we go through a number of other comments that you folks have sent over. So when we're looking at a course has a start and an end date, as well as status, which can be active or inactive. Status is a read-only field that is actually automatically updated based on the start and end date. So it is a field that you're not supposed to be actually managing in any way. Courses should automatically change their status based on the dates of the course. Now, I have heard of issues that sometimes the dates seem to be not active, but the course still shows as active, or vice versa. These may be issues that relate to migration, but if not, then perhaps, or even if yes, this perhaps should be reported, because these are fields that, the status field is a field that you're not supposed to be managing in any way. You're supposed to be relying solely on the start and end date, and the rest should be happening automatically, the status, that is. The status is still a very important field because it affects how the course information is published into Primo. And perhaps a few words about that so that we all understand how it all works, and perhaps better understand what to expect the system to do, and how perhaps to overcome issues or understand what's happening. So when you're creating a resource sharing, a course reading citation, actually what's being created is a citation which is metadata that is independent. It is linked to the reading list, which is linked to the course, but it's actually an independent piece of metadata that describes the citation. That citation may be linked to an object in the repository, a title actually, in which case we actually still have the citation, which is independent metadata linked to the reading list, linked to the course, but it has a link to the repository, to a title in the repository. Now, when we're publishing into Primo, what's actually being published is the metadata, is the repository. The publishing profile has an attribute or a parameter that sets whether the course information will be included in the metadata that is published. So in other words, what's actually being published is the repository, what exists in the library. If a specific title has a citation, a course citation that is linked to it, that information may be published along with the repository item, the title. So it's never the citations that are actually published. It is the repository, it is the MMS, the catalog record that is published. But if it has linked course citation, that is also published along with it. That enrichment happens only if the citation is linked to a course which is identified as active. So if the course is inactive, that enrichment doesn't happen. And in fact, when a course changes from active to inactive, it triggers republishing of that bib record, this time with or without the course citation information as relevant. So if the course became active, it's going to be republished with the citation information. If the course became inactive, it's going to be republished without the course information. So that's how it really works. So again, just to recap on that, you just need to manage the start and end date. Status is automatically updated, and the status is what sets whether the citation information is going to be enriched into the catalog information, the MMS information that is published into Primo. We'll come back to that status and the publishing to Primo with some additional comments that have been sent, such as this second one. There was some discussion in the Alma list some time ago with regard to publishing to Primo, and it was discussed that the publishing to Primo is controlled by the course being active and not the reading list status. We would like to know your recommendation on managing old expired reading lists so that the library can retain historical information while not publishing it to Primo. So like we just said, the citation may remain in the system and not get published if the course is not active. In other words, if you want to retain citation information but not have it published to Primo, the way to do that is by keeping the course not active. It will citation will not get published if the course is not active. The reading list statuses is something else. It is not intended to affect the publishing issue at all. It is actually some more internal, I should say library internal status that is intended to help the course staff to keep track of the citations and their status. In other words, there are statuses to citations that enable you to mark whether the citation is still working on this, I still need more information on this, I'm working on getting this citation, on digitizing it, on putting it in the reserves area, or I'm done with it. And it stays on the reading list, which is actually just to say, am I done with this reading list? Am I still working on this? And so on. There are actually statuses that may be added. So other than the out-of-the-box statuses, there are some more statuses that may be added to the citation. So in the fulfillment of the config menu, you can add additional statuses. And that's exactly the intention of these statuses, for you to be able to track your workflows with regard to the citations and the reading list. The only status that affects the publishing is the course status. The course that is not active does not have its citations republished, and vice versa. So keep that in mind. Reading list statuses are for your internal workflows, as citation statuses are. Affecting publishing is with the status of the course, which comes from the start and date of the course. And again, there are some more comments here with regard to managing these pieces of information, and we will get to them more as we go through this session later on today. But again, as I hop on to additional issues, you can, ask about or comment about anything through the chat, or just speak up, even if I jumped over to a next topic. Okay. There was a comment here about the course code and the option to change the course code. So indeed, the course code is currently not something that can be changed. Perhaps I would just like to briefly open some demo environments we can look at and look at a course. So when we're looking at a course, some random course information. There is the code here, which is currently not something that is updatable. The reason that it has been developed in this way, designed and developed in this manner, is that this course is actually what's supposed to be used for synchronizing the course information with an external system. And that's another point that I would like to emphasize and keep coming back to. Courses are normally, and I think that's the case for probably all of you, courses are, of course, managed outside of the system. Alma is not the main source of course information, and that information actually comes from some other system. That information needs to be reflected into Alma in order to manage the citations and the reading list, but it is not, Alma is not the source of that information. So synchronizing Alma with the external system is, of course, key to good work with the course and citation information. The code is a very important piece in that synchronization. That is why it is not updatable at this point. Once you change that, you may break a link between the course as it is registered in Alma and the course as it is registered in the external system. That said, there are some additional IDs that may be attached to a course. It's been named here searchable IDs, but it is actually just additional IDs that you may assign to a course. These IDs are searchable. They're searchable in Alma. They're also searchable by the APIs, which we will discuss and we'll get to in just a couple of minutes. So there are additional codes that may be used to synchronize the course with some external system. Because of that, and because of the option to change, to retain some codes while still changing others, the code here will indeed become editable. I've looked up our to-do list on when we plan to do that just before this session. I can assure you that it is high on the priorities of the development team to do. I cannot be sure if it's going to be done in November or December, but we do want to get this option out one of these near releases. So we will enable the code to be updatable, but do keep in mind that doing that, you have to make sure that you do not lose link between the course in Alma and the course as it is managed outside of Alma. We may do that by managing additional IDs as we've just discussed. And the next comment here that has been sent is actually relevant for or very much tied with all the issues that we've been talking about so far. So we talked about the status being a direct result of the start and end date. And we understood that the status is, the course status, is what sets what gets published into a Primo or not. The next thing, of course, that is, of course, very logical we'd like to do is to be able to bulk change these start and end dates with the use case in mind that at the end of a term, we would like to update the start and end date of the courses so that they become active again next term or next year whenever they should be active again, so that we get all the citation information republished into Primo in time. So that's something that naturally we'd like to do every term for a bunch of courses in bulk. So we obviously understand this requirement, and it is on our to-do list. I can tell you that we have quite a few plans with regard to courses over the next year. I do hope that we get to do everything that we plan to do. This is definitely one of the things that we do want to get done next year. That is, enable bulk processes on courses, on course sets, using a mechanism similar to the process automation jobs that we currently have, the sets that we currently have. So I don't have the exact details of how we would like to do that, but we do want to get this done. That will enable bulk changes, delete actions, change of start and end date from within Alma. That being said, until we get that is done. And if I go back to my previous point about courses being naturally managed outside of Alma and synchronized, reflected into Alma, the way to keep that type of synchronization is based on APIs. What I'd like to do now is actually take you into the Alma developers environment, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. So this is the Alma developers. That's the URL that is accessible to each and every one of you. And in here we have all information about all of the integrations, the APIs, and the other types of integrations that exist. And in here we can find also information about SOAP-based APIs. That's the link that I'm using right now. And in here there is information about courses. So the courses web services are currently SOAP-based, as you see it is under the SOAP here. We are in the process of moving these services to be RESTful, like the bunch of services that we have up here in the acquisition steps, users, and analytics. So we want to move these services to be RESTful. We will do that over next year. Currently, they are SOAP services, but it is a very rich set of services that are usable for managing courses for all types of uses. So the course entity may be created, updated, or deleted, as well as searched and retrieved from or using the SOAP APIs. The same can be done for reading lists, create, update, and delete, and for citation. So if I go back to the issue of changing end dates for courses with the intention of affecting their publishing, since these end and start dates are coming from these external systems, would be the most logical thing to do for the other systems where the course information is maintained to actually update Alma automatically using these APIs. That would be the best way to do that. With the Alma developers, you can, of course, create these web services, but I'm also quite sure with the sharing spirit that is so much common to Alma users, that if this is in use, the Alma Developers platform is, of course, a platform where you can share that usage and allow others to actually also make use of updating courses with these APIs. So I haven't looked at the statistics of whether these services are used by whom and for what purposes. But if anybody is using these services for updating courses, the Alma developers would be a great platform to share that and allow others to make use of that. And the recommended way to work with courses would be by updating them continually from your external systems, including the end date. That would be the smoothest way to do to anyhow manage the courses you would like to get their information into Alma using these APIs. So again, I'm not going back from what I said before. We do want to allow better management of courses from within Alma. We do plan to have next year tools such as bulk updates from within Alma, but we do see the APIs as the means by which that can be done even before we do these tools. And in fact, we would recommend the way to do that because it is a natural expectation that the courses would be synchronized with their source system. Okay, I'm continuing to run on with the next topics, but again, I'll repeat what I said before. Do feel free to hop in with questions, either speaking up or by the chat as we go through. Feel free. Okay, there was another comment here about the use of analytics and the possibility to apply analytics to measure how many items were changed to the temporary location, the 12 unknown, the reserved location, within a desired date range. There are a number of workarounds for doing that, and the question is about doing that from within Alma. So as you know, the courses information we're working on with regard to analytics. And what I can say is that there are a number of ways to do that in analytics, none of which are where it will eventually be or how it eventually is desired to be done. But there are some ways to do that in analytics today. So just a word about analytics. I'm not managing analytics. I'm not fully aware of the exact timelines of plans in analytics. But as you know, analytics in its current status is actually a daily snapshot of the database, arranged in a reportable way, but it's actually a daily snapshot. In other words, it is not an incremental update, and history information is not actually included unless specifically added to a subject area. And the physical items subject area is one that does not have that information yet. So while this question or comment is related to courses, it is actually a question about the physical items subject area in analytics, and is just as well, you know, if you want to keep track of any changes of locations in any context that happens in the system, the physical items subject area in analytics would be your natural way to do that. But being that it is currently a snapshot of the active status, what you can get from analytics is a status of what's currently in that location, but not what has been in that location yesterday or the day before or a month ago. So, and again, with the change to incremental, perhaps that will be solved, I'm not sure. But with the current status of analytics, you can still have that information. And if your queries are focused, like this one, you want to know about a specific location, well, what you can do is get these snapshots out of the system with analytics tools. That could be done either by subscribing to a report that retrieves that snapshot on a daily basis, or by using APIs. And if I go back to the developers network, there are actually services, web services, also for getting analytics reports. They exist both in SOAP format and as RESTful APIs. That's quite new. The RESTful equivalent to the SOAP analytics report. But with any one of these options, you can actually retrieve a snapshot of this specific location at it could be any day, it could be any week or any month, depending on the granularity of which you want this information. And then based on that information you retrieve from analytics, you can run your own reporting. So you can see how many items I have had a specific week, how many I've had another week, and so on, and then get that information in this space. So you can have something automatic that just runs the API and gets the information for you out of the system, puts it somewhere, and then you can analyze that information from there. That's your current option with the existing status of analytics. There's actually another option, but that would depend on how you do your citation management, how you actually get the items moved into the reserved area. There are a number of ways to do that, but one of which is using move requests. You do not have to work this way, but some of you are probably using methods, which is placing move requests on items that need to be moved to the reserved area, and then filling these requests by actually moving the item. If you are using it in this manner, then you can take advantage of another subject area in analytics, which is the request subject area. The request subject area is somewhere more or somewhat more reportable in terms of history. In that subject area, you can report on history requests, and you can report specifically on move requests. So you can create a report for move requests that are for a specific target, and you can report on their completion date. So you can run a report that says, I want to report on all of my move requests that were for the reserves area and were completed within a specific time range. That will give you exactly the information that is being asked about in here. So that, of course, will be relevant if you are using Move Request, and then you can easily create this report from analytics. I must admit I haven't created this report myself. Again, analytics is not where I swim all day, but I have asked analytics folks here at the office about this, and that's the answer that I've received. So I think it should be workable. Okay. Another question or comment came here has to do with producing letters for course instructors. That is, of course, a very reasonable use case where we would like every start of semester, actually a while before the start of the semester, send the list of existing reading lists to the instructors and ask for feedback to see if some of these citations are no longer needed and can be removed, or if some of them, some additions need to be made. So how can we create these letters? So that's a use case that we are aware of, and so go back to us having quite a few plans in the courses area. That is another one that we have identified, we have heard of, and do plan to do, but it is not yet in the system. But again, going back to the APIs, and I will keep coming back to that because it is a very powerful tool that does enable you to do quite a few. You can use that tool to retrieve citation information. So again, the APIs that you have in here are quite rich. You can retrieve based on a specific course, its reading list and citations. So you can get for a list of courses, the list of citations and reading lists, and get their metadata out of the system using these APIs, and then pour that information into some other container. It could be an Excel or anything that, or you can even create fancy HTML reports based on that. Depends how far you want to go with these APIs, but that would be a way that you can currently do that before we develop this functionality. So we do have a plan, but these APIs are something that you may be able to use until we do this development. And again, these APIs are something that not everybody has developed. It's enough that someone does that for the rest of the community to be able to share. Assuming you make use of the developers platform to do this type of sharing. Okay, the next comment here is about ordering of the reading list citations. Whoever sent this comment made a comment about not being able to find any rhyme how it is being done. So that is right. You cannot find because there isn't anything there really. It is based on some internal sequence that is created in citations. So it is not by title or author and so on. That is, again, another issue on our to-do list that is planned for next year. I believe this is actually higher up on our list, so that it is in the beginning of next year, first quarter, if I remember correctly. And what we want to do is to be able to sort the citations alphabetically and give the options for sort by title, author, call number, all of these options. But again, the sorting is more to be able to, look at a list in a logical way, to be able to see two citations that are alike, see them one next to the other. But if it is a specific citation that you are looking for, and I guess that is the thing you do most, I mean, you're working on a specific citation, so you open up the reading list and you're looking for a specific citation that you are working on, that of course can be done using a search, just a standard browser search. Will get you to the citation if you're looking for a specific one. So sorting is going to be done early next year. Finding is something we just do with the browser search. So we don't have any plans with the find option there yet. just sorting, which is what I've heard most comments about. The next comments, questions that have been sent over has to do with the ability to add ebook citations to a reading list. And I have them show in the discovery. There's also a comment about adding an instructor's personal copy to the reader's reading list without having to catalog the item. So if I just go back to my reading list that I was looking at before. So when you're looking at a specific reading list, just do that. We have a few options for adding citations for a reading list. Let's go into a reading list. Okay, I have a number of options here. We've spoken about these different options in many occasions before. We'll speak about them also again. But having this add brief option over here is actually cataloging into my repository. So by clicking this, I'm actually now creating a real entity in my inventory. And the reason that I'm saying a real entity is because you have a number of options as to what it is that you will be creating. Maybe physical book or article, it may be electronic book or article. If I select this electronic book option here, what actually I'm doing right now is I'm getting a form for quick cataloging of metadata that is of a bib record and SMS record, as well as a local portfolio that actually I will be creating here. So this section here, resource information, will be creating the bib record, the MMS. But this part here, library and portfolio URL, is actually creating a local portfolio, just like doing it from here, add a local portfolio. By the way, add a physical book is equivalent to add physical item from here. So in either case, I'm creating a local copy, which may be a physical item or a portfolio. The other options for adding citations, such as the add non-repository citation. So if I go back to what I said when we started this session, we have citations. Each citation is actually its own independent block of metadata that describes the citation. It may be linked to a repository bib record or may not be linked. That's actually the difference between the add brief and the add non-repository. So add brief, I'm adding to my repository like when I'm adding from here, as opposed to add non-repository, in which case I'm just adding metadata that is not linked in any way to my repository. So here I don't have an option for physical or electronic because I'm not really creating any portfolio or physical item. I'm just creating the metadata, so it is only metadata, and here I can put anything, including in the node information, any other information, such as the URL, if it's something that I hold but it's not part of my repository, it's some personal copy that I have a link to somewhere on some local server, I can put that information in here in the node, and that will be exposed to the APIs that we've talked about, and that would be the way to do that. So if you go back to this comment, it's about adding ebook citations. You can add them as local portfolios. If you do add brief, select the electronic book option. Or if it is a personal copy, something you do not want to make part of your repository, you can do that by adding that as non-repository. By the way, even if you do choose to create these as brief, meaning you do want to catalog this as a local portfolio, when you do this cataloging, you still have an option to suppress that from discovery. So you can create that as a local portfolio that serves your course and not have it at all published to Primo, or you can say you do want this published, but you want this as course restricted. In other words, it will only show up on a course reserves tab in Primo and not in the general search. So you do not have to use the non-repository. You can still, if you want, create these records and make them part of your repository, they will show up in the repository searches that are done in Alma, but you can suppress them from showing up in Primo using one of these options. Okay. Another comment here is about a book that is on loan and is needed for readings. Is there a way that the library request can be placed first in the queue so that we don't have to be ordered the queue? So I must say I'm a bit surprised with this question because this is what the system is supposed to do out of the box. There is priorities attached to requests. This is standard fulfillment. There is a priority attribute, which is configurable when creating patron requests. So you can set up the priority for patron requests or a number of levels that you can attach. It can be low, medium, high, and highest. I believe it is 4 levels of priority. But out of the box, the patron requests come with a medium priority, while any library request comes with a high priority. So it will take priority over patron-placed requests. That's how the system is configured out of the box. You can change patron requests to get higher priority. So if this is not what you're seeing and your experience is that patron requests do get priority over library-placed requests, I would urge you to place a case for that. I haven't seen such a case, although there may be one. But this is what the system is expected to do out of the box. It should work exactly this way. And if you want to cancel that, then there is a configuration option to actually cancel that. So that's how the system should work. Okay, the next comment question that came in has to do with bulk deletion of courses. This came in the context of migration and how to do migration. But it takes us back to something that we have talked about just a couple of minutes ago. We do plan to have bulk options. We want to have it later next year. It's not going to be done first half of next year. It's going to be done sometime later as it is planned right now. But until that is done, if I go back to the APIs, if you want to keep a good reflection of your courses that are managed in your course systems into Alma, APIs is the way to do that. And I keep saying that APIs is the way to do that. You can delete courses, create courses. All of that can be done online as you do any changes in course information in your course systems. And that would definitely be the best way to do that. So just to reiterate what I said before, we plan bulk actions. It will take some time. We do want to have that next year, but it's not going to be January, February, or even March. It can be later. But the way we understand it is that having these two APIs would be the best way to do it. And I'm still waiting to see some blog posts with some suggestions for some implementation of that so that the rest of the community can make use of that. There was another comment here about the searchable IDs. I think we're related to that, of these being optional, additional IDs, so you can synchronize the course information based on these IDs. So you can change IDs to retain other IDs. So we'll not expand on that. And here's another comment that I wanted to speak about. It's a good comment about removing or updating a record that has been added as brief. So like we mentioned, when you're actually adding brief, you're actually doing two things. You're creating the citation, which is independent metadata, but you're also creating a real MMS and holding the item, if it's a physical or a local portfolio, it's an electronic, that you're actually really adding something to your repository. Access to repository items, that is physical items, portfolios, catalog records, it's allowed only if you have the relevant role. So if you use as brief to create a physical item only a cataloger can go into the bib record and change it. And only an inventory operator can go into the item record and change it, and assume that's the way we would want to have it. That being said, if the record has been created in the context of a course and is intended to be used only in the context of a course, and the indication to that is this course restricted indication over here, so that we know that it's been created only specifically for a course, it would be logical for the operator that has created this to be able to change not only the citation, but also the MMS record or the item information, being that this record has been created only for a course. So that's what we plan to do. And this has been discussed over the list a couple of weeks ago, if I recall correctly. I think I replied to that on the list, saying that we do have plans for next year, and that's another action item that we plan for next year in the courses area, to enable the operators that are managing a course, if they were adding a brief and marked it as course restricted, to be able to have their changes done in the course list affect also the MMS record to the item. But again, it will be optional, so the operator will be able to choose whether it's only the citation that needs to be updated or the entire hierarchy from the MMS down to the item. So we'll be able to choose, and this will be only an option if it's created with this course restricted, and only if, of course, this is the only course that is making use of this record. So if another course hooked up to the same citation, then you cannot change it from one course, and you would need the repository administrators, the cataloger, or the physical item or electronic item operator to actually make these changes. So that's what we plan currently. You need the roles, the cataloger or the inventory operator roles, but you will be able to do that next year based on these definitions that I've just shared with you. Okay, and this is actually related to just that we mentioned just now, the course restricted indication. You may not be seeing that. If you're not seeing this option here, and it is a very useful option, it is probably because you're missing a configuration option. In the resource configuration, and the other settings option over here, there is an option to set this course restricted field option over here. And that's actually how the course restricted works. If I have this set up, it means that if I create a course, I create a bib, a brief bib, and I say course restricted, it's actually going to create in the 999 field a label, course restricted. And that can be used by Primo rules to make this record searchable only in a courses tab. So you need to set up Primo, the Primo rules, and align them with whatever you configure in here. So if it is a 999, you can of course use any other field in here. So if you're using any other, naturally it's going to be some 986 field. You need to make sure that your Primo rules are aligned with this. Because what this actually means is that when the MMS is published, like we mentioned at the beginning of this session, and it is attached to a course, it will have an additional 993 or 999 field with this label course restricted that you can create on your course, on your Primo rules. So if you're not seeing this course restricted on your brief fields when you're creating the brief fields, it is probably because you don't have that field set up. You need that set up for the option to even show on your forms. Okay. We have a number of few minutes and also a number of few questions, so it looks like we're going to be pretty much in time. There was a question here, and it's very nice that you know, issues are being raised, and many times the same issue is being sent by a number of views. It's a good indication that it's something that needs clarification or needs some development that requires some priority. That's the use of statuses for reading citations. So I think we touched upon that. There's the course status, there's the citation reading list status. The latter ones are for internal management of the workflows. The course status is for the publishing. We talked enough about that, so I believe you can hop over to the next comment here, which is also something that we talked about, I see, changing the start and end dates for groups of courses. So we talked about this being an option that we plan to be done internally in Alma, but currently being an option with APIs. Okay, this one is about courses having several reading lists, and we select a way for each reading list to display separately in Primo to be able to create a refined task in Primo. So actually what this means is that we would like to have the CNO. So what I'm opening right now is actually the CNO. CNO fields are added to courses that are enriched, or say to published records that are enriched with course information. The way that this enrichment happens is that each one of these MMS records gets published with an additional CNO field, which has these subfields. That includes information from the courses that are attached to the published MMS record. So in subfield B, we may have a start date, and in subfield C, the end date, and in other fields, we will have instructor information and course name and code. Obviously, what you see is that the CNO field does not include any information from the reading list, and actually what's being asked about in this comment is about adding the reading list information also into the CNO field. So like I said before, this is another comment that I believe it has also been discussed over the list, and it is on our to-do list. I admit I wrote down to myself our internal task, but I'm not sure about it scheduling, which I haven't written down to myself. So I owe you an answer on that. But yes, we will add that, and it will be added in the same area that I just told you, the CNO field added. Okay, almost done. This is about adding reading lists, adding list citations into the reading list. There are indeed a number of ways to do that. We have been discussing through this session a number of options. We talked about looking at a specific reading list and having the add repository, non-repository, and add brief options over here. This is relevant if the workflow that you are using is to look at a reading list and add citations into it. But of course, that's not the only way to do it. Many times, what many are doing, and I've heard of many that are doing it this way, you get your citations in some external source, through some web form, through some email, and you get this list, you know where to get these items from, and you actually go and get the items, and only then you want to say, okay, this pile of items that I have here, I want to move them to the reserves area and mark them as a citation on this course. So in order to do that, you can use the scan in items option. In the change item information, that's actually where you make changes to items. And if you've got these items, and again, you got that because you had an email with a bunch of citations, you were able to retrieve these, and you just want to scan in their barcodes to make the change. So you can set the change. For example, you're moving them to the reserves area in the main library. You can set the due back date onto them. And in here, you can actually set also the reading list for which these items are going to be attached. So you select the reading list in here, and then you just go on and wand in these barcodes in here. And with every such wand in, two things are going to happen. One is that the item will change according to the attribute that you have marked here. But the other thing is that a citation will be added with the bib record that this item belongs to. So you actually create your reading list by wanding in the items. And that's something that I know works for quite a few. Another option is to use a search. So you may be, instead of going into the reading list and from there adding citations, you may actually, again, if you have this list that you received from an email, a web form, whatever, so you have these citations, you can search for them, and once you find them, you have an option to add it to reading list over here. Okay. The way that this works is that having this added to reading list option over here will open up a list of reading lists that are assigned to the operator that is doing the search. So you can see that I got nothing here. That's because my operator here doesn't have any reading lists assigned to. So it is an option that you need to work with if you do, or can work with, if you do assignment of your reading list, and then you'll be able to do search and add. From here, of course, you need the relevant role of a fulfillment services operator to have this link show up at all. Okay, we have just now a couple of minutes, and I think one last comment on my list here, which is about reporting on items that are due back to their permanent locations. That keeps coming up, and it has to do with the course's end date and the end date that is on the reading list and the items. So we talked about the course having an end date. The end date over here affects the publishing. We spoke quite a bit about that. But this end date is also inherited into the reading list. So on a reading list that is attached to a course, there will also be a due back date, which comes from the course's end date. Next, when I create a citation and use the manage fulfillment options to place a move request on this item, that move request is also inheriting this due back date. And then when the move is actually done, the item that has been moved has this due back date attribute attached to it. So I will just pull up an item randomly just to show the item form and show that field as an item. So you're probably not looking at an item that is attached to a course, but you can still see the field. This is an item. Down here is the temporary location information, where you can see temporary location if this item wasn't temporary location. Down here, there's a due back date, which actually stores information as to when this item is supposed to be back at the permanent location. This due back date comes from the move request, which comes from the reading list, which comes from the course. So if you maintain this end date on the courses, you will get the due back date automatically updated on the items. That's of course one way to do that, but if you remember, we're just looking at the scan-in item. When you actually make a move of an item to a temporary location, you can also set this due back date over here. What happens next is that items are now with a due back date attached to them. This due back date is going to be reportable, but also searchable. It's going to be a repository search looking for typical items using my advanced search option over here. Add conditions here. And the due back date should be here. There we go, due back from temporary location date is searchable. So you can search for items that have been moved to a specific temporary location. That is, of course, also a searchable option over here. So we can look at the temporary location and then due back date. So you can see everything that is in the reserves area and is due back at the end of this month or was due back last week. And you can create these reports from here, of course, also from analytics. In addition, there is a job that runs automatically in the system that creates restore requests on these. So actually, if this job is activated for you, restore requests will be automatically placed when you have these due back dates maintained. So you don't have to store them. You can just have the request be created by the system, and then you get pick from shelf tasks in the pick from shelf task list to get these items off their temporary location shelves and start the process of moving them back to their permanent location. Okay, we are just out of time, and also just exactly finished all the list of topics that were on my list over here. So at this point, I would like to thank you for your time and for your very valuable comments and remarks. These are very helpful for us to see what's keeping you guys busy, what's on your mind, to help us prioritize our work. So thank you for those. And if any of you have comments about anything that has been discussed here and would like to follow up on anything, do feel free to contact me either directly or raise that on any of the lists. Of course, we'll be happy to relate to anything. So thank you very much again for your time, and hope to hear from you. Thank you very much.